The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it Wednesdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing okay. Can check the show out a couple of different ways across the Hail Varsity Radio Network on YouTube. Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like, subscribe to that to watch the video portion. Can also catch us now on Twitter with the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Numbers to get in, 489-1240. 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com. And get your Twitter follows out to Elijah Herbel, at Herbal Essence, at Schmidt_radio. Packed show. We'll dive in with Mr. Husker Football, Mike Babcock, coming up in about 15 to 20 minutes. We'll check in with Babbers from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. In hour two, a Sirles sighting. Favorite Husker offensive lineman, NFLer Jeremiah Sirles, going to be with us. We'll talk some Big Red football and, of course, the Tyson's Treasure Chest golf outing that's going to be happening Saturday at Woodland Hills. Sirles and his family have done such a great job with Tyson's Treasure Chest. We'll be on location for the weekend edition, 7:30. Promise you, 7:30. We'll be live for the weekend edition from the Tyson's Treasure Chest Golf Tournament fundraiser to help battle pediatric cancer. So looking forward to that. Bill Conley with ESPN. Really good preview of the Big Ten. It's still preview season, and preview season gets up close and personal in a week, as we'll be in Indy for Big Ten Media Days, Nebraska Day a week from today. And pretty interesting to look at. And this is the question for you. What do you handicap this Big Ten race really being? You as a Nebraska football fan, you as a college football fan, it's wide open. It's 18 teams now, right? The new look Big Ten. Is it a two-team race? Those two O schools, Ohio State and Oregon, or is this thing going to be four teams or more? We can dive into some playoff thoughts as well. What's reality for the league? Garrett McGuire, a great sit-down last night with the Husker Network, and lay it out where the wide receiver room is. We talk a lot, Elijah, about the offensive line, for sure. We talk a ton about Dylan Raiola and the quarterback room, absolutely important, and the running game is going to be key, but Nebraska wants to be balanced and better throwing the football. Yeah, you feel like, okay, the quarterback spot will be better one way or the other, but you have some dudes to help take stress off the O-line in the running game, i.e. that balanced ability. Run it because they have to respect you on offense. So we'll kind of follow up with some of Garrett's comments, Garrett McGuire's comments, 489-1240. Are you recovered? Are you rested? Or have you still been burdened since you're a candle maker, both wicks, morning, noon, night, with NCAA 25? Junior took a break last night. He backed away.
What is this, amateur hour? Taking a break? The game dropped this week.
It's like he's Worm from the movie Rounders, where his partner in crime needed a nap after a 24-hour session of no hold'em, no limit Texas hold'em. You need a nap, huh? That's what you're calling Junior on for. He's in a golf tournament right now. He's at the scene of the crime, so to speak, where Daddy got hurt. I'm waiting for some sort of taunting video as he rides injury-free
past the retaining wall.
I have not yet got that taunt from Junior, but he's up in Omaha today.
Slightly disappointed he's taking a break. I'd take a break for work and the couple hours of sleep I need to function at work. Other than that, I am grinding through my Road to Glory player. I'm a running back at the University of Ohio right now. I decided to go for the route of being a lesser recruited player, and I'm going to try to work my way up through the transfer portal by my junior and senior year. So I'm finishing up my freshman year at Ohio. My all-purpose yards, I'm averaging something stupid like 150 yards per game on the ground. I am just absolutely dominating with my running back. Goes by the name of Frodo Baggins. So he's 5'6". He's 5'6" and like 170. I'm having so much fun with it.
Up there,
solid O-line
in Solich territory.
And a slightly revamped offense since Solich is out. They still have pieces of the option. Still have some of that power run. But they also have a little bit more of a downfield passing attack as well. So I've been enjoying my time at the University of Ohio. I think I got one more year in me before I explore my options in the transfer portal. But simply put, no, I have not stopped the grind of NCAA football. There's no reason to at this point in time. I will quit playing it once Nebraska starts their season against UTEP, most likely.
Clemson and Florida State. As the ACC turns, it's not ACC media days yet. It's still SEC's week to gloat. Then you'll get to Big Ten, and Big 12 already had theirs as they kicked things off. But the SEC and the Big Ten, of course, per Brett McMurphy, saying thanks, but no thanks. The Big Ten and the SEC are giving the old Heisman to Florida State more so than Clemson. So maybe the Big 12 could be a landing spot, but is that the right call? No home for Florida State. They have a current home they're not happy with, so we'll get into the expansion part of things here a little later on in the hour. So quite simply, how do you handicap this Big Ten race? You've got your top 5 teams per FPI, and we'll lay those out for you. NASCAR Eric is in first. Let's get our starting 5 shout-outs in the stream with Hail Varsity YouTube. Coach Brandon Kool-Aid, good to have you, Coach. The other Dave is in. A-Dub is here. The real Matthew, along with Patrick. Jeff checks in. Justin is in. Sal says, what's up? Says, Sal, I'm here. GBR, get those 5-star athletes. Sal, yep, Nebraska Husker football fandom and hoops and baseball. They are nodding in agreement with you. KG checks in. Uncle Jimmy is here. Uncle Jimmy, good to have you. Weston, good to check in with you. Broderick is here. Brent is in. Mr. Snitley, Jeff Snitley, not first, but I'm here, says part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Cliff in Florida checks in along with Tiger Shark Diver. 3-putt, Peace from Michigan. 3-putt, love you, and I live through your name, because that is how it's been on the greens lately, or always for me. Real Matthew, Crew is in. Crew, I'll be back at the gym soon once I get this damn boot off. Elijah, the other Elijah, is in. Jeff Snitley says 7:30 Saturday. I will believe it when I see it.
Put money down, huh?
I'll
put some money down. We're
Snitley,
7:25 even.
The next Templeton Rye is on me all night if I'm not there at 7:30.
Well, it should also be noted my first game in the Cornhusker State Games is on 10 o'clock on Saturday, meaning I need to be
You're
there
out by
9:45. I need to be there. Need to be out by 9. There's more reasons than just the one for the 7:30. It's going to happen. Steak and a beer bet, says Jeff Snitley. We can make it happen if you want. It's going to happen because I got to be to that court. Knowing myself, being a little bit older now than I was last time I played a competitive basketball game.
Ripe old age of 25.
I need to get a little more stretched out. I need to get some shots up beforehand. So I need to be out there by
shots are we
by
talking?
probably 9:40. I'm there to win it all, Schmitty. So it's not those kind of shots. It's some 3-pointers, maybe some mid-ranges, some free throws. I'll skip the layups. I'm ready to go for that Cornhusker State Games. I got my new shoes in today as well. For the
What'd you
Games.
order?
I'm wearing them right now, actually.
We've had foot pick requests.
Oh.
Are they Kobe's? Are they KD's?
They're Jokic's.
Okay. Strike 2, strike 3.
They're the Jokic's. He released a special line.
They Nike?
They're not. They're some Chinese brand I've never heard of before. But they released a cool
You're going to be in a boot next week, too.
No, they're the different colors of the shoes are the different colors from the characters of SpongeBob. So
well,
I've got the Squidward ones on for those on the stream.
Okay, there we go. Stretching is overrated, says Brent. Michael is in. Anthony Sargent. Anthony, good to have you. Okay, more shout-outs, more commentary. Keep them coming in the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube, like and subscribe. 2, 4, or more. How wide open is this Big Ten? It's not the West where throw a dart. Iowa, don't fumble the football. Wisconsin, be good on the road, right? That's your path to success. Typically, win your home games or play competitively, then go get drilled in the Big Ten title game. I look at this and listen, the Big Ten a year ago, 7 of the top 11 defenses in the nation lived in the Big Ten. A lot of them lived in the Big Ten West. But 4 out of 18, right? Circle that number. That's your playoff potential projection. Ohio State and Oregon, best teams money can buy on top of elite coaching, okay? Penn State, 5-star quarterback going into a third year. I think with their skill, their line, Penn State's a playoff team going off of what they've done. If they're 10-2 going into a season, schedule's difficult because you've got SC, you've got Oregon, you've got some more helmet games to deal with. Michigan, I think they're a good bowl team, but they're not a playoff team. I think USC is going to struggle. I think Iowa's going to be in there because of their schedule, and they're really, really good. I think Wisconsin's record will not represent how good they are. I mean, they could be a 7-5 team no one wants to deal with. And I think Phil Steele was right. Go check out the Phil Steele sit-down yesterday on the podcast. But he's looking at, 8 or more wins for Nebraska with that breakthrough year. Listen, I think Ohio State and Oregon, you're going to get the appetizer, and then you're going to get the main course. You'll get the game in Eugene coming up in October, and then you'll get them in the Big Ten title game. But that's not to say that there could be some bumps in the road. I say that about Oregon because of their schedule, right? They've got your normal Pac-12 dance mates. They've also got Ohio State. They also have to play Oregon State. And that's going to be a little different with Coach Bray and not Coach Smith. And also Boise comes to Eugene. So it's not as an easy a schedule with Oregon, but they're pretty bulletproof in my opinion. I think with the Big Ten too, a lot of the perception will be shaped based on these non-conference games. In the Big Ten, despite all their TV buddies, will have to prove well. That means if you're USC, you probably need to split with LSU and Notre Dame on top of have a winning record against some of your conference foes. Iowa, Iowa State, that's a statement. Nebraska, Colorado, that's a statement. You have Texas and Michigan, big statement. West Virginia has rebounded a bit. Penn State opens the year up with them. And then don't forget Rutgers is one of those sneaky teams for the Big Ten. A Rutgers win can count not only for Nebraska, but count with the rest of the league. They're at Virginia Tech. So the Big Ten, unlike the SEC, you have Tennessee and NC State and Bama going to Wisconsin and Clemson and Georgia. But that's really kind of it for the non-conference tiebreakers, so to speak. Big Ten has a lot of opportunity like you see in the NCAA basketball tournament, right? What's your RPI look like? What's your perception shaped like before you get into conference play? Conference play is going to be murder enough. It will be with all these helmet games. How do you do in the non-conference could sway that. That's a little different discussion than is it 4 or 2. But I'm gonna lean to 2 teams. I'm going to lean to Oregon and Ohio State just because of how deep they are, how talented they are. And Elijah, it's an easy answer, but they're really good on the lines of scrimmage. They're built different. They're built with skill, but they're also built more like a Michigan on the lines of scrimmage.
The question to me, I am leaning more towards 2 than 4 as being the contenders for the Big Ten this year. The question to me is, can you get a third team that gets in there and makes things interesting, such as your Michigan?
I think it's Penn State, isn't it?
I lean towards Penn State as well. And I look at Penn State. They do avoid Michigan this year, which helps them. Michigan doesn't have the easiest schedule of all time. They got a non-conference game against Texas. They got USC early in the season. Ohio State's going to be big to close the year. They have Oregon at home as well. Not the easiest schedule in the world for Michigan. I look between those two teams of can one of those two, Michigan and Penn State, make things interesting for Oregon and Ohio State? Because I am in line with what Phil Steele told us yesterday, that Ohio State and Oregon just have boatloads of talent, and there's a pretty wide gulf in talent between them and the rest of the conference. Penn State and Michigan being the two teams that are kind of in that middle ground between the USCs and the Iowas, and that the 5 through 9 range and the 1 and 2. Michigan and Penn State are kind of in the middle ground. Can either of those two teams separate themselves and be a threat to Ohio State and Oregon? That's the question to me, and that's why I think maybe it's a 3-team race, especially considering I think you can safely expect there's going to be 3 teams from the Big Ten into the college football playoff this season, if not 4. You can safely expect 3, so I think that third spot's going to be big. Which of those between Penn State and Michigan, though, is the one that could challenge Ohio State and Oregon? That's the team that could make things interesting this year.
I think you're 4 for the playoff. Right now, as we talk in mid-July, talking season, your Oregon, your Ohio State, your Penn State, your Iowa. I mean, I think those are your 4, and do you snake one more in? Do you get 5 of the 12? We'll check in with Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Coming up, we'll check in with Jeremiah Sirles, get his thoughts on the Big Red, the Big Ten, as we kick off Hour 2 at 5. Mike Babcock with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports at MD Babs. Follow Mike on Twitter. Subscribe to his bi-weekly newsletter, Mike B at hurrdatsports.com. Babbers, it's almost time as we're making our way through July to get to kickoff and camp and all of that stuff. Indy next week. How you doing? Drove by. The yard looks immaculate again. As Babbers, the pride of South Lincoln when it comes to yard. It looked wonderful.
Yeah, I love me some green weeds. It's really a daunting task to make those weeds look like grass, but apparently I accomplished that. And you guys are so far ahead of me. You're figuring out playoff teams. I'm still trying to figure out whether Nebraska is going to be bowl eligible.
So you're still wrestling with that? Just jump into the deep end of the pool. They got 6 easy.
Yeah, well, that's what I think. But I thought that last year, I guess, at one point, and it didn't work out. So I take nothing for granted, especially in this new world of the big whatever it is, or I guess we still call it the Big Ten, right?
Big 18.
Well, Mike, think about it this way. Instead of wrestling with, is Nebraska going to be a bowl team here in 2024, we're just going to leave that to the side. We'll let the season play out. We're going to discuss the top teams in the Big Ten. Who's going to be in the college football playoff to get around discussing whether or not Nebraska is going to be a bowl team.
Well, you know what?
It's 4D chess.
Sure, 4D chess, and we're not ruling Nebraska out for any sort of surprise or breakthrough. I think that's, what does the breakthrough look like? And I think 7 or better is kind of the expectation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think 7 or better is the expectation. Bowl eligibility, to me, is a given. But a given, when I say that, doesn't mean a whole lot, as we found out last year.
Let me ask you this with Nebraska and the fact that they've had, as Bill Conley noted in his preview today, 7 straight years of sub-500 play, I believe. The quote in his story was, can Nebraska just go from being bad to being good again? Can Nebraska be a good football program again? And I think yes is the answer. But the snake bitten versus mediocre, I don't think they've ever been mediocre. Their records have been far below mediocre. They've been bad. But it's not been snake bitten. It's been poor play, and I think the poor play has been a result of some poor coaching.
Yeah, and I think that when we evaluate Nebraska, we have to evaluate it in context. I mean, the discussion, I forget where it was, the discussion about whether Nebraska was a blue blood or not, which I think there's no question Nebraska is if you look at all the statistics over time. But there's a tendency to look to the present, to the current, and not take the past into consideration there, as you would with, say, probably Notre Dame probably gets that historical part of it. But yeah, that's the thing. I think you have to measure it against that tradition as well. And certainly Nebraska coaching has not stepped up, and probably on some level, recruiting across the board hasn't been sufficient to get the job done.
Well, Mike, we've kind of asked the question here for a couple years on this show, like how long does Nebraska remain relevant in the grand scheme of all of college football if they're unable to get wins, if they're unable to get above 500, if they're unable to get back to where we think Nebraska should be? And I think this offseason could be answering that question a little bit. We've seen people no longer including Nebraska in the Blue Bloods. I think it kind of shows that Nebraska's time being a national power could be running out if they don't get things turned around in short order under Matt Rule.
Well, yeah, you got to get them turned around at some point, certainly. But again, I think historical context, when you look at the number of victories Nebraska had, all these different statistics, not just where things have been the last 20 seasons, but where they've been over the course of time. Five national championships, back-to-back Hall of Fame coaches, those kinds of things. You have to take those things into consideration. But yeah, the more Nebraska falls under expectations of some sort, and I don't think you can expect year after year for Nebraska to be challenging for a national championship. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think you can be nationally relevant in some kind of a reasonable way, because you've got to climb back, where things have gone, where they've deteriorated in the last 7 seasons, or wherever you want to put the time frame. You've got to go step by step, but certainly Nebraska needs to take that step forward, and we're not seeing it to this point.
You're in a danger zone time with the expansion, with the playoff expansion, with your conference getting murderous. I mean, it is tough. It is going to be tough sledding in the Big Ten week in, week out. And you've been lost for almost a decade. You are going to get passed by, and you've been passed by the Big Ten West. And that's not a shot at the current staff or players. I'm just saying now you go here year 2 with experience, with talent, with a plan. I mean, you're in good position to climb back up, but you better get moving or you're going to get passed up by everybody. You're in a tipping point moment with this new Big Ten and this new playoff era.
Yeah, it's a whole different context now than when you go back to the Big 8. It was Nebraska and Oklahoma. That's pretty much how you saw it. You saw Colorado jump up there at one point. You saw Kansas State jump up there at one point. But there was a consistency there in Nebraska and Oklahoma. And then you go to the Big 12, and the dynamic changes, and now you're in a situation it's just a whole different college football world with transfer portal, NIL, conferences. You've wiped out the Pac-10, 12, whatever you want to call it, and you have to be able to adjust, and it's a much more difficult time for Nebraska because of where it's located in terms of recruiting. It's more difficult, I think, now to recruit because of the way the conferences have aligned, and how it's a group of 4 conferences that are kind of dominating the landscape and could potentially go off on their own and create their own playoff, and that's down the line, obviously, but it's certainly a possibility because those are the programs that are defining what college football is.
It's Mike Babcock with us here. And Mike, with the way college football is changing, everything you just said in context here, Could you make the argument that with the way, I guess, recruiting is consolidated to the big conferences and the rich getting richer, those teams that are successful in college football being able to generate more in NIL, which they're able to give to their players, which means they're able to get better and better players, could you make the argument, especially with things going in-house, that if Nebraska doesn't get its feet under it here as the Big Ten expands and moves to the West Coast, that it may never be able to get its feet under it just because of how much of an uphill battle it's going to face as some of these teams that do find success see their revenue continue to grow and the amount of talent they're able to bring in continue to grow as well?
Well, I think that's a possibility. That's one scenario, obviously, because you continue to be successful, you continue to generate revenue, you continue to pay players. Basically, that's what we're talking about. You pay players. It gets more and more difficult if you don't have your foot in the door when this, and it's already open, you don't want it closed on you before you get your foot in the door in this whole context of paying players and what the college football world is now compared to what it once was. It's dramatically different.
Well, you've been good once, and Brent makes a good comment. Bama and OU sucked in the 90s. Nobody can stay on top forever.
And that's true, but
you've been good once, you can be good again, but this is such a whole different ball game.
Yeah, with the
landscape.
The landscape and the money factor and NIL and everything that factors in it, it becomes much more of an uphill grind. I agree with him in that no one's going to stay on top for forever, but I think it's a lot more likely that teams can stay on the bottom for a long, long time with as difficult as a climate becomes to rebuild programs in the modern college football.
You get some wins this year if you're Coach Rule and company, and that offering plate's going to fill up. It will. And Babbers, I'm going to keep you over if you got a couple extra minutes. We're up against it here, but about 2.5 minutes here. A thought with case in point with August 3rd. I mean, $25. The fan can go check out a practice. That's a pretty cool revenue stream because of the fan base.
Yeah, I was kind of I had some reservations about that, but I see other programs are doing it, and you've got to keep up with the times. That's the thing. It's a way to generate revenue, and that's the bottom line. I mean, give fans an opportunity, yes, to see practice, but you've got to be able to generate that revenue. And that's the thing that's so important now. What we're talking about is it's a paid opportunity when you go to college and play football now at this level. It's a pretty well paid opportunity, and you've got to have some way to generate that money so that you can pay these players to get the players that you need to be successful, to be in the conversation for the playoffs, expanded playoffs.
Mike, real quick, your pecking order right now, the Babbers preseason Big Ten, what's your top 4 look like?
Well, like I said, I haven't paid a whole lot of attention. I've got Ohio State and Oregon in there, and I haven't decided which is which. And then after that, I don't know. I don't know whether Michigan. You mentioned Iowa. I don't know if I'm on board with Iowa yet or not. Penn State probably under consideration there. But I want to see what happens with the additions to this conference and how, for example, Oregon adjusts to this conference. It's a different way. You play differently in this conference than you did in the Pac-12. How does Oregon adjust? How does Washington adjust? How does USC adjust? UCLA. But I think Oregon and Ohio State obviously are going to be in that discussion.
I think Oregon's adjustment will be a little more like Penn State's adjustment in the early 90s. They were just that good. They can play anywhere, anytime. We'll talk wide receiver room. More with Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Some overtime here with Mike Babcock from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports at MD Babs on Twitter. Get to subscribe to his bi-weekly newsletter as well, Mike B at hurrdatsports.com. Babbers, I want to dive in real quick with the wide receiver room. Garrett McGuire was on the Husker Network last night, and pretty good mix here of, well, the some old souls in that room, thanks to the portal with Nayor and Banks, and some young guys you're extremely excited about that, as Garrett said last night, need to be more than package guys. And tell me your upside, your thoughts on that wide receiver room with that mix of young and newer, or I should say that old and newer combination.
I think there's a lot of talent in that room, which is obviously important when you've got, it's probably going to be Raiola, the quarterback. You've got to have some guys that he can throw it to, get that offensive line to give him some protection, get the running game established so that you can't just focus on one thing. But I think that they've got guys that can step up. One guy that I'm really looking forward to seeing how he fits into this is Malachi Coleman. I think he's going to be a really good receiver. And you mentioned Nayor and Banks. Who am I forgetting?
Lloyd.
Jalen Lloyd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. To me, those are probably the top guys. But you've got Elliott Brown. You've got a lot of guys that in this day and age, it's, how do you bring these guys together when they're going to have to be rotating? It's not like they're going to be on the field all the time. And I think Nebraska's done a good job of getting a wide receiver room that has multiple guys in it that you can feel comfortable with on the field.
And another name to add to this that I think could be more of a wide receiver this year as opposed to his traditional position would be Carter Nelson. There's already some tight ends with talent in the room. When you look at Fedoni and Borkature, guys that have had time to kind of work on their bodies and be a little bit more dual threat with what they can do. Carter Nelson still needs a little bit of development time, it would appear, in terms of adding some size to his frame. You wonder if, in order to get him on the field in year one, whether he's going to have a role that looks more like a wide receiver than as a tight end, a possession-type wide receiver that can really be a matchup nightmare over the middle of the field.
Yeah, he has size and very athletic. And, Janarin Bonner is now listed as a wide receiver. He's not going to be playing tight end and fullback probably. I think Nelson could fit in that way because of his athleticism. There's no question about that. And he does need to put on some weight. So let's get him on the field.
Babbers, you mentioned Malachi Coleman, and Garrett McGuire really focused on him last night with that combination of size and speed and physicality. So that next step that's talked about, guys that got a taste of it with that burner speed, the size, that next step looks like what in year two for Kai?
I think just comfort level and being a part of the room. I think that, as you mature, you have a season in there, you have more confidence in yourself, and as part of the team, you're a teammate. I think those are important things. I think it's a mental thing primarily because he has the athletic ability, the size, the speed, whatever. He just needs to get the mental side of it, and he's going to get an opportunity to do that.
Babbers, what are you working on here with your bi-weekly newsletter with Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports? Again, Mike B. at hurrdatsports.com to subscribe. What have you been focusing in on?
Next one up is I got a couple stories about Monty Kiffin. May he rest in peace. He was it was unbelievable his senior year at Lexington High School. The team that he played on, that team was 9-0. And I think it was a small Class A school then. And you consider that it was Monty Kiffin, Mick Tingelhoff, and Dallas Dyer were all on the same team. Pretty good high school team, huh?
That's Hall of Famer.
I can't remember what publication it was, but a national publication had them as top 10 in the country that year.
Yeah, they should have. Really good. Did you have much interaction with Monty over the years?
I didn't have a lot, no. I also mentioned this in the newsletter. As a youngster, I saw him play at the York City Auditorium against the York High Dukes, and he I have a vivid memory. He stood out. I don't remember how the game came out. I don't remember much about it except that he stood out. He was a man among boys.
Can't wait to read that, Mike, and awesome to remember the great Monty Kiffin. Babbers will holler at you next time. Thanks again for jumping in with us and spending a few extra minutes.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate you. There he is, Mike Babcock with Hail Varsity at MD Babs on Twitter. So we have another NIL proposal. This is from the real Matthew. And I still think 1890 should have a fight night at PBA, and the only beer on tap would be Cornhead Lager. We're nodding in agreement to the real Matthew. Celebrity boxing or MMA, Twitter beefs, have a ring or an octagon, fill it up.
I like it.
Be all right.
I think the better idea, though, as I kind of suggested, you get some Husker media beefs going. Let's get Mitch Sherman versus Chris Schmidt in the ring, or Elijah Herbel versus Chris Schmidt. Mitch
releases the fury. I want no part of Mitch Sherman. You're about a foot taller than I am, and your reach. So unless I get to use a weapon,
I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's a good matchup out there for me.
I don't know.
Oh, there's got to be somebody.
Do you want to fight? I mean, is that what you're inferring?
It could be fun.
Or just in the name of charity, you want to beat the hell out of me?
Next question.
You're gonna go Wookiee on me and rip the arm out of the old socket and beat me over the head with it?
It could be fun to just get some Husker media beefs going. I don't know. I think people would pay a decent little penny for that.
Well, I'm going to have to go Game of Thrones here and hire Elijah V. Sirles. Ryan might be on it. I'm going to either hire Sirles in my place or put Junior in.
Crew says he volunteers. He'll fight me in the ring.
All right. Well, Crew spends plenty of time at the gym, and I'm not saying you don't, but Crew's got some defined arms.
Yeah. I think I'm worried about that. No, one bit.
Did you go to like a dark, crazy place, or were you just kind of a silent assassin on the football field?
Neither really. Like I got myself a little bit worked up, but it was never like
headbutting lockers without your helmet. I mean, let's talk level of workup.
I'm nothing crazy like that.
No.
Just like head down, control the breathing a little bit, or else I'll go to that over the top place, and you can't go to that over the top place, or else you're gonna lose it.
Would you have been classified as a guy that echo of the whistle? Did you take knees out?
Next question.
No.
There is some type. You definitely play through the whistle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
how many guys got carted off on an Elijah Herbel chop block?
Only one, maybe two. Another guy had to limp off. Only one guy got carted off, though.
The old Michigan Singleton block. The Elijah special. We'll wind down hour one. Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
About 10 minutes away, Jeremiah Sirles going to be with us, our favorite Husker offensive lineman, NFLer. We'll talk to him about Tyson's treasure chest as tee-off for treasures coming up Saturday at Woodland Hills. Golf outing sold out. You can still donate to the battle against pediatric brain cancer. So it is talking season. It is media days for the SEC, the Pac-12 / now Big 12. Kicked things off, and we had a little bit of venom yesterday from Paul Finebaum towards Lincoln Riley. The Buffs and Coach Prime taking it on the chin as well this week.
Colorado is nothing. They don't matter. They're irrelevant in the big picture of college football.
But can I just say, I would disagree that they're irrelevant. They're relevant because of Deion Sanders, because he is so Hollywood and 5 million followers on Instagram. And we all, as members of the media, want to know what he's going to say.
It's about him. It's not about the University of Colorado. And that's what concerns me.
I disagree, guys.
This is college football. This is it should be about players, and instead you know the coach. You don't know anyone other than the son and the defensive back.
So speaking of the players, just to clarify, they had 51 players go out of the transfer portal and 43 come in, 11 more than any other team. And so Deion Sanders has basically been living in the transfer portal, RG3. But
so you had this this tornado that happened, and old Finebaum pulls a grenade pin. You don't matter.
He's right.
That's the worst thing you can be in college football. It's the persona and personality that's stationed in Boulder.
Well, is Paul Finebaum wrong? Let's
see.
Let's define relevancy in college football right now. There's two factors to it.
Can you get to a playoff? Can you contend in your conference? Can you get to a playoff?
Are you good enough to be able to swing what happens in your conference throughout any given year? I'm talking like among teams that are contending for a conference championship game. You're relevant if you are good enough that whenever you're playing the top teams, they actually have to be prepared for you, and it's not like, okay, Ohio State's just going to walk in and roll you 48-0. That's one factor. And then number two,
what's the gap?
Number two, are you in contention for a college football playoff? You don't have to make it every single year. Don't have to be in it to be relevant, but are you at least in contention throughout the year where the games that you're playing matter? So that's what I would say from the outside looking in. Paul Finebaum's definition of relevancy is. I don't necessarily disagree with him. Under that definition, is Colorado relevant? No. Is Nebraska relevant? No. There's a whole bunch of teams that aren't relevant in college football, and Paul Finebaum only cares about the relevant ones, the teams that actually have national relevancy in terms of affecting the final standings in a conference and affecting who's going to be playing in the college football playoff.
I think Nebraska is. We'll see how this year goes. We'll see how week 2 goes. But Nebraska, with this monster league it's in, has a chance to make some headway if things fall into place and be relevant and real again. I mean,
Nebraska
you can
has a chance
finish
to be relevant by the end of the year, but
Sure.
it's not contestable that right now in the national landscape of college football, they're not relevant.
As a brand and a product, you're waiting for them to get off the mat. That's the narrative about Nebraska. And with the Buffs in prime, it's a couple of questions. One, are they going to be any better this year? 2, how long is he there? 3, is he going to get it figured out, or is it always going to be a turnstile where you're 2-10, 4-8 1 year, and maybe you get enough kids to stay where you jump to 8-4, but it won't matter because you'll be buried in that Big 12 league. 8-4 does what for you? Gets you to an okay bowl, but then knock on that playoff door, especially with as much juice and depth as there's in the Big 10 and SEC. Sirles checks in next. Hour 2 on the way. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in Papa Sirles, Jeremiah Sirles with us. Find him on Twitter at Sirles71_HSKR. Sirles, thanks for squeezing us in, man, as you're coming to us on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel and down in that football den of yours, man. How you been?
I'm good, man. It's hard to beat the weather. The weather's been phenomenal after what was terrible last week. So I've been outside trying to enjoy the time there, and then just got done doing some dancing lessons with the wife. So, we're getting it all figured out.
Hold on a minute. Dancing lessons didn't go well. Almost called off the engagement because she keeps stepping on my feet. But we survived it. Tell me about your dancing lessons here and what spurred this here. You've got light feet. You've always had them.
Yeah, so our kiddos have swam at Josh the Otter since they were 6 months old, and they put on a gala every fall. And what they do is they essentially do like a Lincoln Dancing with the Stars thing where you go get dance lessons. It's a dancing night. People can vote. You got to donate, like the whole bit. So Em and I said, yeah, we'll do it. And so we're learning West Coast swing right now. We have a wonderful dance instructor, and we're just going through the steps and learning with the 1s and the 2s and the 3s and the 4s and just crushing along. We had our second lesson, so we are not good by any stretch of the imagination, but we're having fun doing it.
So West Coast swing, does that mean you're going to be wearing a cowboy hat?
No, that's country swing. I learned so many things here. There's country swing, there's East Coast swing, there's West Coast swing, there's the Argentinian tango, there's everything under the sun imaginable. All I said was, honey, pick a dance that you want to do, and I'll do it. I don't care what it is. You just pick it, and we'll roll.
So is it a little more La La Land then?
Sure. I think it'd be a little more La La Land. Yeah, I mean, it's right up my alley, right? I'm super pumped. Performer, ready to roll, go do my thing. She was the one that was like, what did you get us into here? She'll be a good sport. She'll have fun.
Is there footage of the lesson?
Will be. There will be.
Okay.
The footage right now is terrible. We just look like little robots trying to count on an 8 count. But, yeah, I showed it to my wife showed it to her mom, my mother-in-law, and she goes, you guys need it's not very good yet. We're like, yes, we're aware. Thank you.
That's awesome. Sirles, we'll get into some football here in a minute, bud, but the Tee-Off for Treasures annual golf tournament and fundraiser, Woodland Hills, this Saturday. It's sold out. I've played in this before. You and the good folks with Tyson's Treasure Chest, JP and company. I mean, it's such an amazing event. The good dudes at Lazari's cater for you, and special, it's near and dear to your heart, a chance to fight pediatric brain cancer.
Yeah, and coming right off the heels of the Team Jack one that we had just last week, which you also were part of. Thank you for that. And it's all money to fight for the same cause, right? They're different names, they're different things, but both causes super near and dear to my heart. I was involved in the beginning of both of them. And, this golf event has transformed over the years from us banging down doors and trying to get last-minute signups to fill our teams to we sold out this year in sponsorships only, right? And we didn't even open it to general people to come in. We get people like email the Facebook page all the time. Is there any spots left? So it's been so cool to see the way that this event has transformed the money that we can raise. It's parlayed it into us doing a bowling event in the fall or in the wintertime, right? So we do a bowling for a cure as well. So it's just been phenomenal. I mean, Liz and Austin are just incredible people for what they do and how hard they fight for this disease. And, I wouldn't be on the board. We wouldn't be where we're at without them. But yeah, it's been a great event. Can't wait. I hope the weather holds out.
Tell us about the work of Tyson's Treasure Chest as well.
Yeah, so the whole idea behind it is, when kids are going through chemo and they're going through their treatment plans, it's a tough and lonely place. And so the idea was we want to build treasure chests and then put them on the cancer or in the wards in the children's hospitals. And then we want to fill them with toys so that when a kid comes through, it's not a hand-me-down toy or a toy that's been there forever. It's their toy. They can take it. They can bring it home with them. It can be something that travels with them to and from as they're doing their chemos, right? Just kind of their thing. And, so we just continue to build chests. We're trying to get into Iowa for this year for the Nebraska-Iowa game. We're trying to see if maybe we can do something crossover with them with the Iowa Children's Hospital with the Wave and stuff. So working to get some feelers put in on that as well. But yeah, I'm trying to get up in Minnesota with the Children's Hospital. So we're just trying to expand and just keep trying to do everything we can to help these kiddos.
Well, Sirles, thanks for what you're doing, what Liz and Austin are doing, Emma's doing, JP. It's been an incredible outreach on all parties to fight the good fight and bring that smile to a kid's face. So important with what they're going through, and fantastic perspective. How are the teams looking this year? I know they're sold out. Is there a favorite? My team last Monday finished last, 20 out of 20, plus 6, but we had a good time.
Yeah, well, it didn't help. You had Pierre Allen on your team, who I'm pretty sure doesn't golf, showed up without clubs.
He got to use mine.
He got to use yours, which, slight height difference, not by much. You two basically twins. And then it didn't help that you're also out there dangling around in a boot. So, you guys got some adversity you had to fight through there, but you fought through it nonetheless. But no, I mean, every year this is a classic. You can pay to win this tournament, right? And I have no qualms with that whatsoever. There's cheats. There's all kinds of games you can play to move up tee boxes and string stuff, because at the end of the day, it's all about raising money. And I tell people that all the time, like, don't show up to this tournament thinking like, we're going to play stick golf and win it today, boys. Like, oh, no. You can absolutely buy your way to a championship here, and I'm A-okay with it because every dollar goes to fighting pediatric brain cancer.
That's good stuff.
Buy a title. I love it.
Buy a title, baby. How big's your checkbook? How big's your wallet? That's how big the trophy case can be in your room.
It's just like college football then, right, Sirles?
100%. That's like Oregon, unlimited NIL, right? Phil Knight's opened up the checkbook. Look, Phil Knight, you want to come play here? You can win with a 1. I don't care. You buy enough string, you can get a 1 and win the tournament.
Look at that. We're going to shoot an 18. Sirles, I want to get your take on the Big Ten. We were diving in. Is it a 2-team race for the Big Ten? Is it 4 or more? Media days in a week in Indy as we dive headfirst into another season. Where do you think this landscape's at for the Big Ten? Is it Oregon and Ohio State and everybody else? Anybody else you think that could challenge those two as you look into this season? Playoff projections, I'm thinking 4, right? Minimum of 4 for the Big Ten, depending on how the schedules navigate. But what are your thoughts, man? I know you've cracked a little bit of a preview to get ready for the season.
Yeah, the more I look at it, I do think Ohio State's by far and away the favorite. Right? I mean, I don't really think it's even close. The amount of money that they put onto that team in NIL and how they brought transfers in and ushered some teams out, I think clear and away they're the favorite. The team I'm most curious about is Michigan. Right? You lose Jim Harbaugh. You lose, I think, like 12 guys to the NFL, right? Like, that's hard to just think that they're just going to rebuild and be super competitive again. I think they're going to be good, but I don't necessarily know if they're going to be a 10, 11 win team. I mean, they might be more of an 8, 9 win type of team, which is still great. But, that's the team that's really intriguing. Obviously, Oregon's got all the hype coming in, but I'll tell you this, man, if they play defense the way they played defense last year, they're in for a rude awakening in the Big Ten. Right, like they're used to shootouts, and I watched those games with Arizona State and running the gambit and going up and down the field. That's not how big boy football is played over here in the Midwest. So, they'll be curious to watch. USC is another one to watch with Lincoln Riley and seeing how he's going to continue to do things out there. Is he going to get that place turned around, or is Caleb Williams leaving and all those other guys leaving? Is that going to be an issue? And then I think the team people are sleeping on is Wisconsin a little bit. Luke Fickell going into year 2, more of his system, right? They had to, if there was a bigger land shift of systematic differences between the Oregon or the Washington of or Wisconsin of old and the Luke Fickell Wisconsin, like, dude, you're talking lineup and 22 heavy personnel running A-gap power to spread them out, RPOs. Like, that's an adjustment period. But I'm very curious to see what they can do. They added some pieces, obviously lost Braylon Allen, but I think that they're a team that I'm really curious to see how they come out of the gate. I believe they play Alabama week 3, so we'll get a chance to really see what they look like.
Sirles, with Oregon, you touched on the Pac-12 style, and I think line of scrimmage-wise, they're better. They're not a Pac-12 line of scrimmage on the offensive side or defense. The back end, that mid-level in the Pac-12, you kind of are what you are in your neighborhood, and they didn't have to be as on point defensively. You're right, they've got to shift to it. I want to get your take with just how difficult it is. Not that the Big 12 was finesse. It wasn't. It was a tough league that had Oklahoma playing for titles. You guys played at a high level. You had really good teams in the Big 12. Texas played for a championship. So my question is, with this Big 10 setup, how difficult is a transition for a team coming from more of a finesse league, not team but league, to a blue-collar, 3 yards cloud of dust, more of a Michigan style to win it?
Yeah, it's going to be a huge adjustment for them. And I think you're right. Talent-wise, they can match up with just about anyone in the Big Ten from a talent perspective. For me, it's going to be, can they handle the war of attrition week in and week out? Right? Is it something that they can do from the opening of Big Ten play till Thanksgiving weekend? Can you handle the beating that the Big Ten puts on you, right? From a travel standpoint now, because you're coming out from way out west, from a weather standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, like your depth is going to be tested, your mental fortitude, can you handle 1-score games at the end of the game? All that stuff's going to be really interesting because they're used to just running and blowing and going and seeing how they can score at will. And there's going to be times this year where they will be able to do that because of their talent level. But when it gets down to nut cutting time and we're trying to figure out, like, hey, can this team hang in a 17-14 wind field position type battle for 2-3 weeks in a row? How do they handle that? That'll be new for them, right? That'll be new for Dan Lanning and that whole crew up there. Right. So it's like, how do you guys kind of navigate this? And then is it a learning curve, or do they just kind of pick up where they left off last year and just start running?
Yeah, it's kind of that I don't want to say age-old question, but that question of, you can do it on the West Coast. Can you do it on a rainy day along Lake Michigan at Northwestern in front of 500 fans when no one really wants to be there?
Correct. Well, I mean, they played at Stanford, so it's not that. I mean, Northwestern Stanford's fairly similar.
But the weather's beautiful in Stanford.
And I'll tell you this. The Big Ten bailed out those West Coast schools this year. Mm-hmm. They bailed those dudes out. Like, they didn't make none of them have to come out in November and go to Wisconsin or Iowa, or like when it should be cold and drizzling and no one wants to be outside. Like, they bailed them out this year. I was hoping the Big Ten might stick it to them a little bit and give it to them. But no, they wanted to do it for the TV ratings. But it's going to happen one of these years.
What was that shift like for you from Big 12 to Big 10, that war of attrition? How real was it?
Yeah, it was very real. I mean, from an offensive standpoint, we kind of scored at will a lot because we were a very different offense than the Big Ten had really ever seen before, right? We had speed and we would run and we had splits that were forever spreading guys out, right? But the problem was our defense wasn't built to play in the Big Ten, right? Our defense was built to rush Colt McCoy and to rush Sam Bradford and Texas Tech and, getting rushed the passer 60 times a game. It wasn't built for 330-pound Wisconsin offensive linemen to run power 40 times in the A-gap, right? Like, we just didn't have the personnel for it. And as we got into the Big Ten more and we recruited more bodies like Vincent Valentine and Malik Collins and like Baker Steinkuhler got a little bigger, like we were able to handle it more. But it definitely, that first year from an offensive standpoint, we were very much like, man, we're going to have to score like 28, 35 points a game if we want to give ourselves a chance, because we're also not going to get the ball back very often, right? The way that they control ball control in the Big Ten is very, very good, especially the Iowas, the Wisconsins of old. Like, they understand how to milk the clock and use the clock efficiently.
Sirles, in your mind, as we discuss kind of this lines of scrimmage being Big Ten ready, what are some things you're going to be watching for from Nebraska? I guess things to listen for from fall camp and things to see against UTEP and Colorado to determine, are these lines of scrimmage ready for the Big Ten? I think you can expect the defensive side with Nash and Ty to be ready to go. They kind of proved it last year. But I guess on both sides of the ball, what are some things to watch for in terms of, are these units ready for the grind of Big Ten play?
Yeah, I'll start on the offensive side. For the offensive side, I'd like to see how quickly we can find our final five, I'll call it, right? Our guys that are going to roll into week one. How quickly can we find those guys so they can start working together? Right, get that synergy together, get that ability to go, okay, all of us are thinking of one, right? We're all one mind in 5 different bodies, right? That only comes with lots of time playing together. I know we have some guard positions that are going to be up for battles. Where does Turner Corcoran fit in? Does Micah Mazuka fit in somewhere? Henry Lutovsky, Evan Jenkins, right? Or did he drop? He dropped one of them.
He dropped Jenkins, Justin Evans, isn't it?
Justin Evans.
Okay, yeah.
Right. I never remember. Justin Evans, sorry, buddy. Right, like, how do those guys fit in? But the great thing is I know we're going to need all of them because it's a war of attrition. Like I said, not very rarely do you have the guys that run out there week one. They don't start all year long. It never happens. Someone gets dinged, an ankle, a knee, something, right? So how quickly can we get those 5 guys out there? On the defensive side, I'm really excited to see that some of these young guys take a big jump from year 1 to year 2, specifically Cam Leonard, right? Yeah. How big of a jump? I mean, he showed such great flashes last year just rushing off pure athleticism. Like, how much more technically sound did you become, right? How much more did you go, hey, Jamari Butler, how much more technical sound? Mitch Sherman, like all those dudes. It's not Mitch Sherman. He writes
MJ Sherman.
Yeah, MJ Sherman.
Mitch Sherman would be fun to watch.
Mitch releases the Fury every Tuesday.
Come off the edge, Mitch. See what you got. I got one left in me, right? But like, how much more do those guys develop under Terrence Knighton and Tony White's system in the offseason to really see if they can become not just guys that are splashing a pan plays, but like contributors from a down in and down out basis.
Sirles, up against a hard break. I need 90 seconds on the other side. Can I do that?
Yep.
All right, Jeremiah Sirles with us, and golf tournament coming up Saturday. Woodland Hills, the venue, and the Tyson's for the Tee Off for Treasures annual golf tournament. Tyson's Treasure Chest, a great fundraising opportunity and charity for you to help battle pediatric brain cancer. Sirles and his family and so many great folks been doing this for a lot of years, and can log on and do that today with the website tysonstreasurechest.org, where you go. We'll be on site for that Saturday. More with Sirles coming up. Hail Varsity continues, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, he's air drumming right now. If you're watching the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube, Jeremiah Sirles in the stream with us at Sirles71_HSKR. Tyson'sTreasureChest.org, the Tee Off for Treasures event. Woodland Hills on Saturday, 8 a.m. is the tee off time. Should be awesome. Sirles, thanks for some OT here, brother. And
absolutely.
So let's talk John Butler. You're in Buffalo. John Butler's in Buffalo. Now you're both in Nebraska.
Yeah, no, John's fantastic. Coach Butler's phenomenal. I mean, I got a chance to watch him work with guys like Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, Levi Wallace, Tre'Davious White, and all those guys continued to, even guys that were deep in their career, continued to get better and continued to get growth in their game. He's a detail-oriented guy. I mean, I pissed him off a few times changing the scout team stuff up, but that was always fun. But
hold on, tell me.
So I got to play center on scout team, which was my favorite thing in the world to do, because they'd line the card up and they'd be like, "Hey, here's the blitz. Here's where it's coming. We're gonna slide this way." And we'd slide away from the blitz. And I was like, well, that's stupid. They're not going to do that. And so I'd get up there and be like, new Mike this way. We're going that way. And slide us into the blitz. And I'd pick it up. And I used to love watching the defensive coaches just lose their mind. Right? They're not going to do that. And I remember a few times picked up a few safety blitzes that old Coach Butler wasn't happy about. But, he's very detail oriented. I think he's a phenomenal guy. He brings a lot of experience from the NFL to this system of Tony White's, especially in a defensive system that has a lot of DBs to play on. He's got a lot of challenges to find in the corner position specifically, but the dude can develop. The dude has a ton of experience. I'm excited to see what he can bring for this Black Shirts team. And
he had a quote on a podcast that I really liked. And it might be a little bit more NFL-centric, Sirles, but I think it kind of translates to college football now, where he's talking about, how'd you build a rapport in that defensive back room in Buffalo? How'd you get those guys to trust you? He's like, it's simple. I'd tell them what they had to do to get more playing time and what they'd have to do to make more money. And turns out those are the two motivating factors for football players. How do I get more playing time and how do I get more money? So I just lay out, this is what you have to do to get more playing time and get more money, and they'd follow me into essentially the gates of hell.
Yeah, I mean, it's really pretty much that simple, too. It's do you want to get on the field? Then you're going to do it the way I teach it. I mean, as much as people might not think it, cornerback especially is a super detail-oriented technical position, right? Yes, you have to be a super freak, God-given, right? You got to be able to run, jump, do your thing. But I mean, the ability to get in and out of breaks and be disciplined with your eyes, not be handsy, right? All that stuff comes through. And I watched him drill and drill and drill those guys. And, I think that's going to be the mentality he brings, because guess what? College football players are getting paid next year. So, yeah, you want to make more money, get your butt on the field and do it my way.
Sirles, David Sanders Jr., Nebraska in that Final Four for him. 5-star offensive tackle from your old stomping grounds in Charlotte. So your recruiting trip, was it more fit and Coach Barney, Coach Garrison, Coach Bo, or was it the peers that also helped influence you? Then we'll get you out.
It was a lot more about fit for me at that time. It was about where am I going to go? Where not only going to develop as a football player, but I'm going to develop as a person, right? Am I going to leave this place a man, right? You come into college a boy and you leave a man. It's very simple. And where's the best place that's going to do that for me? And I really loved what Coach Cotton had to do with that, Coach Garrison, Coach Bo. And also I looked at the roster and there was good opportunity, right? And so good opportunity was going to lead for me to have the opportunity to seize it and go with it, right? Nothing was promised. But, looking at that and looking at what the needs they had, I felt like it was a great spot. And obviously I made a very good choice.
Who hosted you?
Mike Smith and Keith Williams.
Okay.
Mike Smith and Keith Williams. Yeah, they took me over to Drew Young's house. My official visit was Missouri in 2008 when we got dirt stomped. But yeah, no, had a lot of fun. I came back up for the CU game when we won the field goal though. So that made up for it.
Good luck charm. Going to come down to a field goal this year against the Buffs?
I hope not. I hope we stomp those dudes. I can't stand those guys.
Well, Sirles, let me get your take then here as I've been diving into the new NCAA football game. I'm pretending I'm the greatest coach out there. Is it more important to bring a recruit to a big game with a big atmosphere, or is it more important to bring a recruit to a game where they're going to win? Well, what do you think I should employ as a head coach?
Big atmosphere that you're going to be competitive in. I think it's okay if you lose the big game, right? But you need to be competitive, right? There's the Michigan game 2 years ago was the ultimate, right? Yes, you lost it at the end in a terrible fashion, but the environment was phenomenal. You were competitive against one of the top teams in the country. That type of stuff you can't beat. No one wants you to come out here and be like, ooh, wow, you beat UTEP by 40. Cool, right? You want to come to a big environment game as a college football recruit.
Sirles, we'll check in with you later on. Thanks for a few minutes, bud.
Absolutely, guys. Go Big Red.
There he is, Jeremiah Sirles with us, Hail Varsity Radio, and great stuff from Sirles on the Big Red, some college football, and, of course, Tyson's TreasureChest.org. Excited to be out there for that on Saturday. We'll do 7:30 to 9, weekend edition on site.
So are you planning on opening up the checkbook in order to win?
I probably won't play.
You won't play? Okay.
because it
is full. I didn't know if they had made a special exception for the one and only.
No, I'm gonna bug Seth and Gregor's for a slice of pizza, I think. And nope, just do the show. It's all good though. It's all good. But that's a good question you had with the environment or the
winnability.
The winnability. the thrashability. Ultimately, it needs to be that high profile wow ball game you go blow somebody out in. I mean, it's quite frankly a miracle. When he said I was there for the 2008 Missouri game. That was Chase Daniel, the booger picker, who's still scratching a check as a backup in the NFL for the Missouri quarterback. That team was great. They were number one in the country for a stretch. Weren't as good as the 2007 Missouri team, but they had Macklin is one of the guys.
Jeremy Macklin.
Yeah, Jeremy Macklin was their stud wideout. They had NFL dudes up the middle and on the line of scrimmage, and that went really rough at 2008. You go from losing to Virginia Tech, and then you fall to Missouri blowout fashion, and then a week after that, Nebraska goes and loses in overtime to Leach and that Texas Tech team that finished 8th in the country. So you saw that team build in year one. It's interesting to see where year two goes for Nebraska. We talked wide receivers earlier with some of Coach McGuire's comments.
Really fast. I've just been looking this up here. I don't mean to distract you here. I'm looking up the Missouri-Nebraska game. Can you guess?
52-17.
Yeah, can you guess Nebraska's leading receiver in that game?
08, Swift?
No, Nate Swift had 5 receptions for 45 yards, but he was nowhere close to the leading receiver.
Anunwa?
No. Todd Peterson.
Okay, Toddy P.
7
Todd
receptions
was good
for 81
stuff. yards.
He was good. It's just one of those kind of forgotten names.
No, I
haven't thought of that name in years.
Todd Peterson carved up Texas in 07. I believe that's what happened. No, Todd Peterson, hell of a ball player.
I mean, Joey Gans, to his credit, didn't have an awful game that day, despite the fact you got blown out. 27-39 for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're only able to get 2.2 yards per rush against that Missouri front seven.
Yeah, I was not lying.
Yards.
I was not lying to you about the Missouri defense. They were built, man. Pinkel had some squads, and you got even with Roy Halou a couple of years later. Actually, a year later in that monsoon game.
Yeah, the Thursday night game.
Yeah, with Sue breaking Gabbert's face and ankle.
Yeah, and then you saw that long Niles Paul touchdown that kind of sealed the deal for Nebraska. Where
that game was
flexed.
Yeah, that game was crazy because you're down 12-0 going into the fourth quarter, and then you blow up for 4 touchdowns. Niles Paul special, baby, and it was just Kranek was there for it, and he's like, dude, that's the worst storm I've ever seen in my life. As he recounts it, and you just kind of go off. And then you lose your next 2. You lose to Tech and you lose to the Iowa State fluke game.
We need to talk about that. I remember that Missouri game specifically because that's the first game I ever streamed online. Yeah. It was on ESPN 360. They had it for free.
Okay.
And I got to stream it online. It was the first.
That was a Thursday night game, wasn't it?
Thursday night game that was on ESPN. At the time, my family did not have cable, so we're looking through all the options, and they just released ESPN 360. So it's the first time I'd ever streamed a sporting event online, which is now the standard. Well, it's kind of crazy to think about. That was only 15 years ago.
Sue goes off in that game, sacks, TFLs, interception, like a momentum swinging interception where he dropped back. And then what happens? You get a bye week or you get a little bit of a longer carryover, and then it's game day, does a whole 12 minutes, Tom Rinaldi on Sue in the House of Spears, which was cool. And you just didn't follow it up with a W, which was a little tough.
And they followed up with that one where they gave Tech all they could handle, yeah?
No, Tech came in. That's when I first kind of got introduced to the Pirate, was 08.
Okay.
Make that 09. Excuse me, 09.
Was that not the year that Tech upset Texas and Nebraska took them to overtime?
It was the year before. It was 08 with Gans.
That was 08. Okay.
It was 08.
Okay.
Yep, 09 was the Zach Lee era, correct?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, too bad he couldn't have got Joey Gans another year in 09. Pair that defense in 09 with Joe Gans playing quarterback.
Wait.
Talking 12-1, brother.
Oh yeah, no, Tech beat you 31-10 the next week, and then we have the Iowa State.
See, I said that. That's how it went. You go from, oh cool, they came back against Missouri, and then here's the Pirate throwing freaking running back option routes on your linebackers.
Hey, it's the highs and the lows. The year 2 of a rebuild.
They were good. They were good in year 1. They were good in year 2.
They shouldn't quite have the consistency.
Yeah. Well, that's a question too, right? What's your offensive consistency going to be?
Well, it's kind of what we talked about with Jay Moore on Monday, but he talked about as like an entire team is that's what this team needs to have, is that week-to-week consistency, and that's the reason why that year 2 2009 team under Bo Pelini wasn't able to ride their defense all the way to a conference title, which they could have done, but it was about that consistency, which they didn't always have.
That was 2009 was weird because you should have beat Virginia Tech when you ran all over them, but you were held to all field goals, right? And you lose that one on kind of a last-second deal. You outplayed them for a majority of the game. Tyrod Taylor, man, just did it to you. But that was a double-digit win Nebraska squad. I think didn't they finish 10-4?
Yes.
Yeah, but you still had the BS against Texas. You lost a heartbreaker to Virginia Tech. You shouldn't have lost to Iowa State.
Your defense never quite showed up against Texas Tech, which is tough. But you finished the year strong, though.
Yeah, but I mean, what did we say? 31-10?
31-10.
Put up 10 points against the Texas Tech defense?
But, I mean, considering that Nebraska defense, that's the best Husker defense since 2001, probably, as you go all the way back.
Probably since 99.
Probably since 99.
We'll check in a Jock Doc, and shockingly enough, a Major League pitcher kicked the door and broke his ankle. Dr. Brandon tells us next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Dr. Brandon Seifert with this Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Dr. Brandon, I got to say thanks to you and the crew at Nebraska Ortho. Your walk-in clinic, a lifesaver for those who can't drive or ride in a golf cart, and for everybody, quite frankly.
Hey, buddy, I'm glad you had a good experience. Sorry you had to use our services there, but I'm glad you're on the mend.
I am on the mend, and we'll keep with the fractured ankle part of things and turn away from me to Dane Myers, outfielder for the Marlins, ejected earlier this week, pre-All-Star break, 8th inning. Didn't love a call at first base, lobbied for a review. The ump stuck with the call without the review, got ejected as he was jawing with the umpire, and then went to the clubhouse, took a swipe at the door with his foot, and the rest, they say, is history. Busted his ankle. You've got to kick a door pretty darn hard, or at least whack at it to bust your ankle in a kicking motion, don't you?
Oh, you got to have some force on that, right? And so either A, you got some pretty significant force, or B, you just hit it awkwardly enough that you roll that ankle off to the side, or you have more of kind of that twisting mechanism to the outside like we've talked about with some of those high ankle sprain type injuries, and you just rotate that thing through, and then you just stretch all those ligaments, and eventually those ligaments, the force of those gives, and all that force transfers to the bone, and then the bone obviously cracks and breaks, and you end up in this scenario, which, again, pretty rare, but obviously can happen just depending on how you hit that door.
Well, let's talk a little bit about ankle fractures, recovery, and severity. I mean, not all breaks are created equal in the ankle.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. And so, there's kind of those two variations we have talked about here before, and we kind of start on the ankle sprain level, then work up to the fracture level. But it really is all just based upon kind of the rotation and the angle of that sprain or the twisting mechanism. Pretty hard to fracture the ankle, just kind of a straight-on blow to the ankle. Usually it's more some type of rotational mechanism. So thinking about anatomy of the ankle, There's basically two main bones that kind of make up the top part of that ankle. You have your shin or your tibia. That's the main kind of largest bone that forms the top part of the dome-shaped part of that ankle. And then you have on the outside the smaller bone, kind of that ball you feel on the outside of your ankle. That's called the fibula. So those two kind of form the top part and stabilizing structures. Below that, there's kind of another dome-shaped bone, that is the talus. So all three of those are involved. Typically with an ankle fracture, you're talking more about those two kind of top bones, whether it be the fibula or the tibia. Pretty rare to have a big tibia fracture from this perspective. Not as rare if you have more what we call the medial malleolus. That's the ball portion on the inside of your ankle. But it's kind of a higher level to get there. Typically what will happen is with a twisting injury, you'll break the outer bone, which is the small bone, the distal fibula. And then as that force kind of travels around the outside into the back, then it can rotate through that medial malleolus on the inside, and that's what we call a bimalleolar fracture. Pretty rare to have that. They're not saying exactly what he had, at least not the article I read. I'm guessing it's more on the fibular side. And then you have to start making some decisions about, okay, what's the severity of the fracture? Is it in good alignment? Is there some more ligamentous involvement that will require surgery versus can you just treat this closed or in a cast?
So, Dr. Brandon, with all the different types, I guess, of ankle fractures you just laid out, is there a preferred place or area where whenever you look on the x-ray, you say, okay, we think this person has a broken ankle, let's check the x-ray. Is there a preferred place for a break where you go, okay, this isn't going to be that bad? I guess when you're talking tibia versus fibula, is there anything like that in this scenario?
Yeah, honestly, the simplest way to think about it is the lower that fracture occurs, more on the outside parts of the ankle, whether it's the very inner part of the medial malleus or the outside part, just the fibula. The lower you go on those, the better it typically is, and especially the more it's to the outside, like in that small bone, the fibula. So lower on the fibula to the outside of the fibula is kind of where you want this to be if there is more of an ideal fracture. The vast majority of those don't need surgical intervention to fix. Once you start to travel a little bit higher, we've talked about that syndesmosis ligament. That's that big ligament between both the tibia and the fibula. And more surgery and a much, much longer recovery. That's kind of on that high ankle sprain side. Same deal if you start to work over to the inside of the ankle on that medial malleolus. Those typically, if you break through that, don't heal well on their own just because of some of the joint fluid that gets in there, different from the fibula on the outside. Typically, we would fix those. So you really are aiming for, if you're going to have a fibula fracture or an ankle fracture, that small bone on the outside is putting you in probably a better spot.
Dr. Brandon Seifert's with us, Nebraska Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. Ankle fracture for Dane Myers, outfielder for the Marlins. Got tossed, kicked the door, busted his ankle. So what's some collateral damage, not just the ankle, but from a foot standpoint, Dr. Brandon? Is it possible to have the top of the foot towards the toes, but a little bit further south of the toes, swollen? I mean, how bad can your foot get messed up beyond just the break on the ankle?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're talking trauma like that, kind of that direct blow, then a twist into the door. So there's obviously a good chance there he has some toe trauma, if you will, especially along that kind of first metatarsal, which is that great toe, and then obviously the second one. Those two tend to be the longest, stick out the most. So there's a chance of some trauma there. More rare to have like a midfoot injury, which we've talked about that. That's where you start to get into that what we call the Lisfranc injury. More rare to have that. Still a possibility depending on kind of the direction of the force and how he landed while he was doing it. But those other things obviously add more time kind of onto the rehab side and more time just on being able to kind of retweak this and struggle as you're recovering.
It's Dr. Brandon Seifert with us here at Jock Doc Wednesday on Hail Varsity Radio as we discuss the ankle injury suffered by Marlins outfielder Dane Myers. He was unhappy about a check swing call and goes back to the clubhouse and kicks a door. And Dr. Brandon, in terms of recovery here, it's non-displaced fracture. Unsure what a timetable looks like whenever you dive into the story, but what are you thinking here in terms of when Myers is going to be back and back to 100%, I guess, if you want to say that? There's going to be back to on-field work and there's back to 100%. I kind of want to get the two sides to that.
Yeah, so I would say if this is just a little bit of like what we call like a chit fracture, where he just has little tiny calcifications kind of pulled off the bone from the ligaments, so that I treat that more kind of on the sprain perspective, then he's probably back 3 to 6 weeks, probably fully recovered around maybe 7 or 8. If we're talking like a true fracture that's further up on the fibula, but one that you can treat non-operatively, he's probably back swinging a bat 6, 7, 8 weeks, probably not feeling like he's really full go till about maybe 3 or 4 months potentially. That's a little bit on the conservative side. Obviously, if it's any type of surgery, then the anticipation here would be he's probably out for 3 or 4 months before he's back at it, would be the likely scenario there. It'd be pretty aggressive to have somebody back playing at 6 or 8 weeks after surgery. That'd be pretty impressive.
Dr. Brandon will get caught up again. Thanks for the insight, personally and, of course, professionally with the ankle fracture. And we'll see when Dane can dig in again. We'll catch up with you next time. Always appreciate you.
You bet, guys. Take care.
There he is, Dr. Brandon Seifert with us, a Jock Doc Wednesday Nebraska Orthopedic Center. Jock Doc Wednesday will wind down a Wednesday edition with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, big thanks to Jeremiah Sirles, Dr. Brandon Seifert, Mr. Mike Babcock. Tomorrow's show, we'll check in with the good doctor, Dr. Rob Zadiska. Some O-line thoughts from Dr. Rob. Excited to spend time with him. Gary Barnett back with us. And Mr. Brandon Vogel. Maybe a Danny Burke sighting as well. Burke's Best Bets. Possibly. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So are you back in training tonight for NCAA 2025, or are you going to get some shots up at the gym for your Cornhusker State Games hoops team Saturday?
My gym, unfortunately, does not have a basketball court.
Is there a driveway in the neighborhood you live?
There is one down the street, but I'd feel a little uncomfortable just rolling up to a random individual's house and be like, "Hey, get some shots up real quick." There is a basketball court.
Are you technically neighbors? Is it 3-4 houses down?
It's like a full block. Yeah, it'd be a ways. But there's always like a teenager at that house putting up shots in the driveway. So I think maybe if I just challenge him to some one-on-one, it wouldn't be that weird. I don't know.
Dude, you want to play for $5?
There is also a basketball
Get away
court.
from me, creepy, tall mustache guy.
There's a couple basketball courts within a mile radius of my house at public parks, so I could go get some shots up there. I think the plan is to go get a good workout in, get a lift in, keep the body moving, trust that the jump shot will come back quickly on Saturday morning, and trust that there are better shooters than me on the team that I have assembled. I am team captain.
Are you going point forward?
No.
No,
I'm going a very traditional 4. Well, I shouldn't say a very traditional 4 because as Will Wilson and I discussed on the show last week, he is not on the team. He's unavailable this weekend. He would have been on the team. He's a decent shooter. But the problem is I never quite developed an offensive postgame as a youngster.
You couldn't just back him down?
It's hard to go to the gym alone and hit the basketball court and be like, you know what, I'm going to work on hook shots. Like, that's no fun. You go show up and you go shoot some threes and some mid-ranges in your free throws. So I'm like, mid-range, I'm all right. I got a great floater. My free throw is pretty good. My three-point shot is inconsistent, but if I see 1 or 2 go down, it's going to be a long night for the opposition.
Where's your spot for 3? Top of the key, wing, short corner?
I am wing for the most part. I can hit it from straightaway.
Left or right?
I am definitely a catch-and-shoot type man. So if I spot up, I don't know. If I catch it in rhythm, it's going to be a problem.
You're telling me that you're not much of an off-the-dribble guy?
No, I can't dribble to save my soul, dude.
Scouting report on what Elijah Herbel struggles to create shots. Needs a slasher to drive into the paint and kick.
Exact. That's my game. And if you catch me in the post, this is a scouting report if you're playing me this weekend.
What's your movement like without the ball? Do you just stand and say, open? I mean, are you the guy in the corner or in the wing clapping to get the kick out? Or are you moving? Are you active? Are you setting screens?
I set screens. I'm never a roller. I set the screen and I pick and pop. I do sit in the corner and clap. I'll occasionally back cut if I see the opportunity. Sitting in the corner and clapping is one of the biggest things I'll do on a basketball court. And then if you feed me the ball in the post, I'll get it back to you. I pass from the post.
You're a foot taller than half the guys you're facing. You should just go Shaq Fu on folks.
Defensively, you don't want to see me in the post. Offensively, you do. I am not a threat.
Are you an East German sweater?
Oh, yeah, big time.
So
big
people
time.
trying to use the forearm in your lower back, it's just going to slide off?
You don't want to post up on me either because you will get wet.
Talk tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.